In this video, I'm going to take time and work through some two-step equations and some inequalities as well. So the first example I have is n divided by 10 plus 4 equals 5. So these are two-step equations because we need to take two steps in order to solve these. First, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. That way it'll get this n business all by itself. So I have n over 10 equals, and then 5 minus 4 is 1. Now it looks like I just have a simple one-step equation where I have a number divided by 10 equals 1. So I can multiply 10 on both sides. Here those will cancel, and I have n equals 10. So that's my answer for the first one. In our second example, I have the quantity 5 plus y, and that's being divided by 3, and then equals 2. So since I have this fraction over here, the first thing I want to do is try to eliminate it. So since the denominator is 3, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. These 3's will cancel, and I'm left with just 5 plus y, and then 2 times 3 is 6. So now in order to get this y by itself, we need to get rid of the 5 right there. So I'll subtract 5 from both sides. Those go away, and I have y equals 6 minus 5, which is 1. So my value for y in this case is 1. In the third example, I have negative 9x plus 1 equals a negative 80. So again, to begin, I'm going to do this addition business and get rid of that 1 and subtract 1 from both sides. So when I do that, those go away. I'm left with negative 9x equals, and negative 80 minus 1 is negative 81. So now I have negative 9x equals negative 81. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 9, thus eliminating those over here, and x equals, it'll be negative 81 divided by negative 9, which is a positive 9. So the answer for the third one is x equals 9. In the fourth example, I have a negative 15 equals negative 4m plus 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this 5 over here. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, thus eliminating those guys. So negative 15 minus 5 is going to be a negative 20, and that's going to equal this negative 4m that's over there. Now, in order to get this m by itself, I'm going to divide by negative 4, since the negative 4 is being multiplied by m. So those negative 4's will cancel. I'll have m all by itself on the right side, and negative 20 divided by negative 4, which is 5 on the left side. And then I can use my symmetric property of equality just to turn these guys around and say, instead of 5 equals m, I can say m equals 5. And that's the answer for our fourth example. In this fifth example, I have this quantity, p plus 5, being divided by negative 3, and it equals negative 3. So since I have this fraction, I want to get rid of that denominator, so I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3. When I multiply both sides, this up here and this down here will cancel, leaving me with just p plus 5 over there on the left side. Now the right side, we're multiplying negative 3 times negative 3, and that'll be a positive 9. So now in order to get this p by itself, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and it turns out that p equals 9 minus 5, which is 4. So the answer for our fifth example is p equals 4. In our sixth and final example, I have 3x minus 5 equals a negative 5. And again, I want to get this 3x by itself, so that way I can divide by the 3. So in order to do that, I've got to get rid of this 5 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and add 5 to both sides, and those cancel out, and so I have just 3x on the left side. But it looks like a negative 5 plus a positive 5 there, that's going to cancel out too and leave me with nothing else on that side. So that's just a 0 on the right side. Well, in order to get the x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 3, so the 3's go away. And x equals, well, 0 over 3 is just going to be 0. So the answer for our final example is x equals 0. So now let's go ahead and move on to inequalities. So I have a two-step inequality here. I have quantity y minus 3 being divided by negative 2, and that's less than 4. So the first thing I want to do, I see I have a fraction, so I want to get rid of that fraction. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a negative 2. So on the left, when I do that, this negative 2 and this negative 2 cancel out, so I'm left with a y minus 3 over here. And on the right side, I have 4 times this negative 2, which makes negative 8. You have to be really careful about this inequality symbol, because in this case, I multiplied both sides by a negative number, and when you divide or multiply by a negative number, you have to switch around the sign of the inequality. So now it's y minus 3 is greater than negative 8, and in order to get the y by itself, I'm just going to add 3 to both sides, just like in an equation, and I end up with y is greater than negative 5. So here's my answer as far as the inequality, but then I need to graph the inequality. So I'm going to put the negative 5 in the middle, because that's the number I care about. A negative 4 goes on the right, because that's one bigger. A negative 6 goes on the left, because that's one smaller. In this case, I have an open circle, because it's just greater than, it's not an equal to. And then I'm going to go, since it's greater than, I'm going to take myself over to the right. So I'm going to fill that in, and that's what this first one looks like, is y is greater than negative 5. The next inequality example we have is n divided by 4, and that's minus 2, and that whole thing is greater than or equal to negative 5. So the first thing I want to do to isolate my variable, which is my n, is add 2 to both sides. When I do that, those guys go away, and I'm still left with n divided by 4 greater than or equal to, and negative 5 plus 2 will be a negative 3. Now, since my variable is being divided by 4, I'm going to do the opposite and multiply both sides by 4. That way those 4's are going to cancel, and I have an n by itself now, and that's greater than or equal to, and then my negative 3 times 4 will be a negative 12. So as far as my inequality, this is it simplified. N is greater than or equal to negative 12. But now I need to go ahead and do a number line with negative 12 in the middle, negative 11 on the right because it's one bigger, and negative 13 on the left because it's one smaller. And I'm going to have a circle, and it's going to be filled in this time because it's greater than or equal to. And then it looks like we're greater than, we're going to head over here to the right. So there's the solution for that inequality. My next inequality is 2/3 m plus 4 is less than negative 6. So similar to the previous example, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that plus 4 over here by subtracting 4 from both sides and canceling those right there. So I'm left with 2/3 m is less than, and I've got this negative 10 over here now because negative 6 and negative 4, when you put them together, it makes negative 10. Okay, I want to get this m by itself, and right now I have a fraction as a coefficient, this value out here. So in order to get rid of that, I'm going to multiply both the left and the right by the reciprocal of that. So I'll multiply the right and the left by 3 halves. Because when we do that, we'll notice the 3's here cancel and go to 1's. The 2's here cancel and go to 1's. And now everything here is gone except the m, which is less than. And now I'm going to multiply this right side. I can do that, kind of make it easy on myself by putting that negative 10 over a 1. Now I have both of them as fractions. So the 10 and the 2 will cancel, because I can take a 2 out of both of those, and it will go down to 5 and 1 respectively. So now over here I have a negative, 5, and a 3. So when I put them all together, I'll have m is less than negative 15. So as far as my inequality is concerned, here's my answer. But since it is an inequality, I need to go ahead and graph this thing. So I have negative 15. One larger than that is negative 14 on the right, and one smaller than that is negative 16 on the left. It'll be an open circle, since there's no equal sign along with my inequality. My less than is just less than. And then it looks like since it is less than, I'm going to head over to the left. So I'll fill in my arrow here, and there we go. Open circle at negative 15, with my line extending indefinitely to the left. In my final inequality example, I have a negative 3p plus 5 is less than or equal to negative 2. So kind of as we've been doing here, I want to get rid of this plus 5, so I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And when I do that, these 5's of course will cancel, so I'm left with just a negative 3p over there on the left is less than or equal to, and now negative 2 and a negative 5 are going to make a negative 7. So in order to get this p by itself now, it's being multiplied by negative 3, so I'm going to divide by negative 3, and I can do that on both sides. My negative 3's are going to cancel, I'm left with a p, and my negative 7 and a negative 3, the negatives are going to cancel, so I just have 7/3. Notice since I divided both sides by a negative, I have to flip the sign of the inequality, and instead of being less than or equal to, now it's greater than or equal to. And as far as my inequality is concerned, this is my solution. P is greater than or equal to 7/3. But of course, since it is an inequality, I need to jump down here and I need to graph it. So when I go one more than 7/3, I'll get 8/3. And when I go one less than 7/3, I'll get 6/3. But notice that can reduce to 2. So I'm going to, on the number line, actually put the reduced version of it. So it's going to be a closed circle at 7/3 because it's greater than or equal to. And since it's greater than, we're going to head over to the right. So there's the solution and the graph for the final inequality example.